You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Devanin, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope and pray that your New Year's off to a magnificent start, and that this year and the rest of your freaking life is full of splendor and might and valor and all the good things you could ever hope and dream for. Today, I'm talking with my homeboy, Jerry Fu. He's a certified conflict resolution coach and a certified leadership coach. He has a shit ton of education under his belt. What I like the most is that he has a Coach Rice leadership certificate from Rice University, and that is a kick-ass program to have gone through. Now, in this episode, we're going to get his unique Asian American perspective. We're going to talk about how to bounce back from getting fired, how to survive the loss of a business. There's some heterosexual hullabaloo that happened in the church that we got the tea on, baby. And we're also going to talk about how you can take salsa dancing lessons and turn that into leadership skills. Enjoy our first episode of the new year. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast today. How are you feeling today over there in H-Town?
Oh, I'm feeling excited. The Astros are doing well, and so the whole city's in a frenzy, looking rooting for it. But yeah, I am excited to be here this morning today for sure.
Well, the Astros doing well is a rare thing. This pandemic has brought all sorts of anomalies.
It's true. Yeah, you get it. Strike while the iron's hot, right? Just enjoy it for what it is. It may not come back.
Gosh, when I used to live in Houston, I used to love going to the Astros games to drink my ass off and try to get on the Jumbotron and everything. I really wasn't that concerned about the sport. I love the entertainment of it all, the entertainment, as we say in the gay world.
Yeah, Charles Barkley said it. I'll say this much. On one of his shows, he said, baseball, just the excuse to sit out in the sun and drink beer.
Hey, take what you want and leave the rest.
It's a fun time. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm very excited to be talking to you today because of your unique Asian American perspective and your willingness to serve your community and the population as a whole. Now, I want you to talk to me about how because you're like a pharmacy doctor, which is different from like a regular pharmacist. You have a shitload of education behind you. I was reading through your LinkedIn profile, and now you own this coaching company. So walk me through how you went from pharmacy to coach.
Yeah. It's people don't see the connection until I make it for them, right? Because I lived it, and I was like, "First, it makes sense," and then I was like, "No, I don't see how that you went from A to B." So we will walk that path. Yeah, basically, I wanted to do something healthcare. I wasn't serious enough to go to med school. I found that out really quickly in undergrad, that if you're not serious about the reasons you want to become a doctor, you're not going to survive all the hoops that make you jump through. For instance, one of my best friends from high school is a pediatrician. He's always been great with kids. He knew exactly why he wanted to be a doctor or a physician. For me, I just said, well, most Asians do this, so yeah, sure, I'll go along with it, right? It's like, okay, sure, I'll do pre-med by default, right? And yeah, so still wanted to do healthcare, and so I convinced a pharmacy school, where I lived up in Tennessee, that I would make a good pharmacist. And so I said, okay, yeah, this is nice. People are going to pay me 6 figures to count by fives. Yeah, sure, that sounds like a great deal. And so the irony is that my mom wanted me to work for a chain pharmacy. She just said, hey, this is stable. I don't want you to deal with, the employment challenges your dad had to deal with, despite having 2 masters in chemical engineering and computer science. Just work for this company, and the benefits and retirement plan, whatever else, are worth whatever headaches you have to deal with on the clock. And I just said, at that point in my life, I was just like, I just didn't care. And I just said, fine, I'll go along with my mom's plan for me. And quickly realized that it wasn't for, but I was too scared to or too pessimistic to believe that I could, still find something meaningful. I just said, well, if those doors are closed, I've already signed with this company, and I got to return my signing bonus if I break my year contract. So I guess I'm just going to stay here. And I just felt defeated, right? I'm just like, great, my mom wants me to marry this girl, and I've got to just accept this job that I don't like. And so at one point, it did get comfortable. Like at one point, I moved on to another store within the same company that allowed me to have the flexibility of scheduling that I wanted. And all of a sudden, I was like happier. Now I'm scared to, leave it because I just said, well, I'm at this really great store and I don't want to do this. But anyway, once that went away, right? I said, okay, I'm tired of this. I need to find something else. And so I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach students in pharmacy, but didn't have like a PhD or residency or things like that that could get me a conventional academic job. But a friend who worked for a pharmacy consulting company here in Houston said, hey, my previous position is open since I got promoted, and I know you teach. Do you want to apply for this job? And I said, absolutely. And so next thing I know, I'm walking away from a full-time job with benefits and, nice things to move to Houston for a part-time job where I'd have to earn my way with this company I was really excited about working for. And 11 months later, I got fired. And it was just like, well, what do I tell everybody, right? I leveraged my connections to get an opportunity for this, and they're going to ask all sorts of questions about life. And the simple answer is that I just wasn't serious about becoming an instructor. And you learn quickly. Also, you can't just be better than 70% of the workforce. Like you have to actually hold your weight and get things done because stories, they're not paying you to give you stories; they want results, right? And then so anyway, so that's when the roller coaster got really weird. I ended up at a House of Cards pharmacy where 4 of my paychecks bounced as I filled for crooked doctors. This guy was just the business owner was just bad news. 9 months of that, my friends finally get me on with a different company that likes me but can't pay me more than 8 hours. And so I'm like, great. How do I pay for rent and groceries this month? So they said, well, you can cover more hours if you work for us out in Austin. And so I go out to Austin, 2.5 hours away, with no idea what my life would look like at this point. And that was the summer. This is 2012 now. That was the summer where some friends in pharmacy who run a leadership nonprofit said, hey, a spot opened up. We know you've been facilitating on the fraternity side, but we have an opportunity on the leadership side. Would you be willing to help out with that? And I said, absolutely. And so, my pessimism applied to a lot of things in my life. Part of it was just my ability to be a good leader. I just said, leadership is hard and I don't like it and I don't want to look incompetent. So I'm just going to avoid it altogether if I'm never going to be good at it. And now after teaching it, I said, well, what if I could be a good leader? What would that look like in terms of work and effort? How would I carry myself if I knew I could allow for this possibility? I had the opportunity to move back to Houston to take on a full-time position with my then employer and proceeded to get written up because I was not keeping my technicians in line. I was still too afraid of conflict to discipline people or even fire people. And, management said, hey, this is also a problem. And so you're going to have to, you're going to have to face this. And so the transition became more apparent when even after getting more leadership experience, and which saved my career because the only reason I have a job now in pharmacy is that I have leadership experience. But I just got tired of the grind where I just said, the jobs that offer the quality of life I'm looking for don't last usually more than 1 or 2 years. They're like icebergs. They're like, oh, great. Like I have more icebergs to hop to, but they're still icebergs. And so I said, well, I'm tired of insurances telling me what I can and can't do. I'm tired of trying to chase down doctors for scripts. But I love these leadership workshops. I love teaching them. I've been teaching them since 2012. And I said, well, what if I had a career in this? What would that look like? And so I started to talk to some people in the space and see, how do you, build a business, things like that. But I was still scared. Like I was still afraid of failure. I was still afraid of rejection. In a lot of ways still am. But then a pandemic happened. And I said, how much longer can I afford to wait to put this, putting this up until I really have skin in the game? So yeah, as of a year ago, I finally put the LLC out and get the website up, and it's flying by the seat of your pants, right? You're just like, I don't know what I need to do today because I've never had to wear so many hats at the same time. But yeah, that was the transition, right? Leadership saved my career. It was a struggle, became a fascination, and now I want to turn around and help people the way I wish I'd been helped earlier in my life.
I appreciate that overview that you just gave me, and I'm gonna go back through and break a couple of those parts down, and we're going to get very granular with
Mhm.
it. But, I say I appreciate the coronavirus from the aspect of a disruption. I love how uncomfortable she came along and shook everybody up. You know, people
Yeah,
who left careers that they never liked any damn way. Cheap ass bosses are actually paying people more. Like when I drive around town, I see, oh, McDonald's is finally paying what, $10 an hour.
nice.
Okay, you couldn't have done that before, but now that you can get people to come to work, now you're doing it.
Mhm.
It's so I love it. So I appreciate the fact that you were motivated. My underwear store down under apparel kind of came about the same way. I had been thinking about doing it for years, and then I didn't do it until because I was there in Houston, Texas, working for Centerpoint Energy, you know, and making good enough money that I really wasn't motivated to change anything. But then when I was homeless, didn't have anything, and was janitor, and I was like, oh well, we might as well go on ahead and order some drawers and see what we can do.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I love problems because of the way they motivate us out of our comfort
Mhm.
zone.
Good.
So what makes you different from every other coach out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for me, I think a big distinction is that my motivations are deeply personal, just because I've been in so many situations of conflict that were uncomfortable, and then, you know, you realize at some point when you can't back out, you can't, hide your head in the sand like an ostrich and just start to run toward things because you're just like, well, I have to do something, even if I'm not great at it. I still have to do something. Like an example I could give is when on my second day as a church class director, I found out that one of the newer guys was sexually harassing women in the class. And everyone says, Jerry, you got to handle this. You're the director. I'm like, you didn't give me a manual. That's not. They're just like, just handle it. I'm just like, ow! Like, no one's giving me a plan. No one's giving me suggestions on how to attack. They just got to deal with it, right? Another time, you know, one of my technicians was actively fabricating lies about me, and it's just like, okay, I have to fire her. It's like I don't want to do this because she knows how to, be temperamental and things like that. But yeah, part of it is just the fact that this is a deeply personal thing. Like I see it, dealing with my parents and their expectations of what they want, right? And then I see it in my work relationships with people I don't get along with, and before, just be all differential and just, oh well, like just let me just play nice, even though I, hate their guts right now or something like that. But yeah, it's a combination of personal experience. It's a combination of my love for reading, because I love pulling, great stories and great examples to study from, even if I personally don't have that experience. But if I know a book that has something useful for my clients, I'm going to be able to pull it and, share it and see how they respond. And people have told me several times just that the quality of my questions is off the charts. So I'd say those are three things that people would hopefully be drawn to if they think I can help them.
I can definitely feel the passion emanating from you because you have lived through the experience, and there's a difference in between somebody who's trying to give advice or tell people what to do and haven't lived through it versus somebody who is coming from their darkness, which they've now turned into light. When I was talking to you about coming on the show, that was the first message that you sent me had some of your personal experiences in it, and I was so impressed with that because there's no lack of people who want to go come on my show or come on different podcasts to to give out all this advice and everything. And I'm all like, well, wait a minute, what skin in the game do you have? What have you been through? Why should people listen to you? What's going to be the buy-in? How can you relate with people? And I can tell that you mean what you say, Jerry, because I was looking on your website through your different packages and things like that. And first of all, you're super transparent because you have the prices on your website. Most, which I appreciate, because most
Mhm,
people who are speakers, coaches, consultants will not tell you how much shit costs. They
mhm.
want to book you into like a meeting so they can try to convince you to pay whatever they're asking, which wastes my time because I'm all like, bitch,
Yeah.
just tell me what the shit costs. And so, because I'm gonna pay it or I'm not. And
Mhm.
so you get that, which lets me know that you're coming at it from a very humble and open minded and commonsensical, if that's a fucking word. If not, it should be a commonsensical angle, because you're like, look, it is what it is. Here are the prices for everything. And you got like 50 different damn packages too, which is very impressive because I had never, ever, ever seen a coach with that many different options. It's not really 50, y'all, but it's probably like a good 15 or 20. But it's like a lot. And the prices start as low as $45 to get your assistance. So you've priced things with probably the pandemic in mind and people's different economic situations in mind, and that is so on tempo for the times. And so my hat's off to you for being real. And I can tell that what you're saying is true. And I know that the way that you're approaching it is different, because the way that you've branded yourself is very different. Like somebody who's been through some shit. I can Now, what would your ideal client be?
Yeah, yeah, great question. In coaching, we like to say the ideal client is who we were 10 years ago. So
Oh,
the
Lord.
ideal client is, yeah, is, Asian professionals in their probably mid 20s to early 30s that realized, hey, I did everything my parents told me, right? I went to med school, I got married, I started a family, right? I got the accounting job at the big firm, but somehow I thought this was enough. I thought I could finally take my gloves off and say this is enough. And you realize you've just inherited a whole different set of challenges, right? Like they don't go away. I thought, oh, a fat paycheck and nice 9 to 5 work about nights and weekends was enough for me. It's like, no, it's not. They didn't tell you that, but they didn't think about it themselves either, right? They came from a different standpoint, and so yeah, for people to realize, hey, you know what, what my parents told me, like I can understand and appreciate their background as and their justification, but it's not working for me anymore. So, what do I do now? Right. Do I switch careers? Do I go back to school? And so, yeah, those are the type of people with the questions that I want to help answer. So, yeah, those are my ideal people to help.
You've mentioned parents a couple of times now. So speak to me about how strong parental influence is on children's career decisions and life decisions. Because you mentioned that your mom had a girl picked out for you and everything,
Mhm.
which I wasn't aware that that was like betrothing people wasn't a thing. I didn't think that was a thing in Chinese culture, but who
Mm.
am I? So how much of an issue is parents getting all up in y'all shit, really?
I mean, it's funny to think about that. I know a couple friends who are parents that are very well adjusted. They're like, yeah, we don't know what kind of profession they'll be. We're just trying to do our best to give them the tools they need to kind of figure things out on their own. That is not true for a lot of Asian parents. This is what Asian parents have, right? They, especially through the firstborn, they're like, we got to make sure this one like succeeds at life. Like he can pay his bills and he has a, cushy job or whatever else like that. And yeah, I mean, I felt like my parents kind of tag teamed me, for a while because early on, I haven't shared this example much just because it hasn't come up, but just to give people some window into what I'm dealing with, right? Like, I remember when I'm like misbehaved, even when I was like a toddler. So my dad would just, if he lost his temper with me, he'd just pick me up and throw me to the bathroom and close the door and just let me cry my eyes out until like my mom would check on me after the fact. Half the time, there were times I didn't even know what I did. Like, all I know is I got my dad upset, and next thing I know, this is how he felt like he had to discipline me to make sure I did, get out of line again. And then other times, right, you know, I would ask for his help with math, or he would teach me math, and then I remember I was struggling with the concept, and so he proceeded to teach me 2 words in Japanese because he lived in Taiwan during the World War, so they had to learn Japanese while they were under Japanese control. And he said, "Head, adama, concrete, konkuri, atama konkuri. And he basically taught me 2 words in Japanese to tell me that my head was made of concrete. And I could totally hear my paternal grandfather, his dad, telling him the same thing, because this is how we move people forward. And then somehow, after I got to like mid-20s, that's when I transitioned to more of my mom giving me more advice as to do, what to do with life and things like that. Because now she's just trying to be protective. She's trying to keep me from hurting myself or making like fatal mistakes, things like that. And so, yeah, she's like, take this safe job, marry this safe girl. Yeah, I mean, there comes a point where they care, right? There's no question how much they care about me. They care about making sure that I have stability in my life. And then I've realized in my own journey with them and also my own leadership experiences that if you help too much, you're actually hurting the person because now you're enabling them and you're keeping them helpless because they never learned how to do things on their own. So yeah, I've seen plenty of Asian, people, that immigrants, sons of immigrants, daughters of immigrants that are dealing with these expectations, even as they've got to a point in life where they should be independent. But your mom's always going to be your mom, right? So yeah, and matchmaking happens. It's not to the point of other cultures like Indian culture where this is still like a very big thing, where they're just like, no, we've negotiated this for you, males will accept it. It's like, no, they'll resort to matchmakers if like they feel like you're floundering and like, oh, your dating life's not where it needs to be. Like now we're going to step in and do something about it, right? So yeah, it's very prevalent. I'd say I haven't met a lot of Asians who say that, oh yeah, no, my parents aren't a factor in the conflicts I deal with.
Well, what you just described to me was what I would classify as abuse. Uh,
Fair enough. Yeah, no, kids they're supposed to do that anymore. That's when TPS gets involved, right? Yeah, they don't do that. They
yeah,
don't allow that anymore.
we don't, for the record, we do not throw our sons into the bathrooms and lock the door. So,
Mhm.
and then mom has to come rescue him
Yeah.
hours later. We don't do that, sir. We don't. I'm speaking to is your dad still alive?
Yeah, he is.
Because I thought you referred to him in past tense earlier, so I wasn't sure. So
Oh, no, 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 no. He's still alive, and I've forgiven him. It's cool.
that is so wonderful, but I don't care. I will say it anyway. Hey, sir, I'm speaking to your dad. We do not lock little boys in the bathroom. We don't like grown men in the bathroom either, unless it's some sort of fetish thing and they want.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. We both grown since then. It's cool. We're okay.
And so I'm just gonna mention this. You mentioned when you were in church
Mhm,
and the guy was harassing the woman. That is a
mhm.
very curious thing to me because people don't often talk about guy on girl harassment in churches. I don't think I've ever heard that. Usually talk about us gays and try to act like we want to come in there and molest everybody's children, which is bullshit. So we got grown ass men to get dick from. We don't need children. But I've never heard anybody talk about like a heterosexual harassment happening in a church. I just wanted to point that out because that's very, very curious to me.
Yeah. And I'm happy to unpack that. In fact, we were joking, me and some other friends who were past directors were joking that if we could compile all the stories of all the times we had to basically run off like predators, just basically looking for cute women to date. Because this is the mentality they have. They say, well, I want to get married. Where's a place I could find, quote, like safe, dateable women? Oh, the church, I'm sure, because people are dressed up in their Sunday best. And when you realize some of the problems people walk into with when they go to church, like it's just like, hey guys, there's a lot beyond that cover that you don't see, right? But yeah, this is what guys do. They just say a church must be a safe place to find women to date. And so therefore I'm gonna start going. And it's I'm not here to turn away people like that are honestly looking for women or, just looking to get married. That's fine. But, you know, like especially in the church, right? Like sexual harassment, like there's never a good place for that. But people keep trying. You know? Well, at least if this isn't work, so I can't get fired from it. It's like you're still gonna get dismissed. Like they're not gonna keep this around. I mean, I could talk about stories of, in counseling, Christian counseling, where guys will, coerce their wives into having sex with them because of, they'll use scripture that justify this. Just like, I'm the head of the household. You need to submit to me. And so, if I want sex now, like, you're supposed to support me. And I'm just like, how's that working for you? You know, like, is this really the best way, maintain a sex life is to coerce her? Like, are you even thinking about like the long-term effects of that? And, what your long game sex life will be if you continue to coerce her? But hey, you know what? Yeah, I'll say this much before we move on. Like the church I used to go to has they have a very love hate relationship with failure. It's like on one hand, they want people to get married. They're just like, marriage isn't even judged. Like, yeah, meant, it's a catalyst for maturity. Yeah, go get married. But as soon as guys start to ask girls out and they say no, or, they break up and things don't go as expected, all of a sudden they're like, oh, shame on you. You shouldn't have done that. And like now she feels unsafe and, and I'm frustrated or whatever. And it's like you can't have it both ways. And then they're like, why are these guys so passive? Right? Like, how come no one's asking out girls anymore? It's like, cause you shamed them. Like you told them, oh, you did a bad job. It's like, I'm not denying that some guys maybe need a little help or a little coaching in how to approach women in a way that they would actually engage well. But that's the problem, right? Instead of studying, hey, thank you for having the courage to ask out that girl. Hey, like, where do you think things went wrong? Hey, maybe you tried this. Maybe you tried that. Maybe you take a shower. Maybe you brush your teeth. Right? And things. It's ridiculous to me because that's happened to me once. That I tried to ask out a girl. I did it in a way that it was public, and I realized I wasn't trying to put her on the spot. I'm just like, no, I just want to go for it. And then I was just like, oh no, that was bad. Like you shouldn't have done that. Like just don't do it anymore. Instead of, hey, maybe next time if you ask out a girl, do it. Don't do it in front of her friends where you kind of put her in an awkward position, right? There's a more constructive way to deal with that. But yeah, overall, yeah, the churches don't want you to know about this, right? Because then they say, well, if stuff's going on with this, I don't want to go to that church. It's like, well, now you're just hiding things. And now this isn't about broken people trying to find a place to heal. This is about you trying to build your machine and make sure that things are so polished. So that now people feel ashamed to bring things up if things are going poorly. But yeah, anyway, I got revved up there for a second. So let me back off.
Oh, you preaching to me. I'm not even much saying anything to follow that up. I'm just gonna make me a little note because I need
Mhm.
to have you back on the show so we can spill some church tea.
Sure.
That is a fascinating aspect of you, sir. I do appreciate
Mhm.
that. Now, so you had mentioned you got fired. I want you to, in one of your blogs, you talk about some emotions. And y'all, he has a pretty cool blog on his website, daftingleaders.com, which will be in the show notes. And you talk about some emotions that happen: anger, anxiety, disappointment, helplessness. Okay, so a lot of people have been laid off, fired because of the pandemics. That's happening so much right now. Can you talk about some of the unexpected, unexpected, perhaps emotions that happened when you got fired?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for those of you who have been through a situation, whether you lost your job fairly or unfairly, right? Mine was fairly, like I just didn't get the job done. So let me preface this by saying that no, I deserve what I got. I say that to condemn myself. I'm just saying, guys, if you don't get the job done, don't expect to keep your job, right? Yeah, at first I was intimidated because when the guy, and the head of my department, told me on a Friday afternoon, hey, you need to come speak to me. I was like, well, writing's on the wall. I knew his calendar. I knew that HR earlier. So this is kind of like the formality of what he proceeded to walk into his office. And all I could do was remember to maintain eye contact because I knew that even if I looked away because of shame or deference, like he was going to tell me to, look at me when I was talking to him. Right. So I'm intimidated, and all I can do is just kind of, take the lumps and then tell us it's my last day, and I'm just stunned. It's like, oh, like I knew it was coming, but like when that final punch landed, I was just like, oh god, I'm just so stunned because now, I moved to Houston, for this job. My old position at my previous company was filled. Like they weren't going to take me back necessarily. I couldn't count on that, and so I'm just feeling stunned and disappointed and ashamed that, I felt like I wasted this opportunity or this opportunity was no longer available to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, all my friends are going to ask questions. Some people are going to like judge me or be disappointed with me. Like, how could you let this happen? Right. And yeah, just even though I only lived 4.5 miles from work, that was the longest drive home because, I had to return my parking pass, and give back all my, access materials. And then what really hurt the next day, I mean, I knew they were going to do this, but just to experience it, they cut off my login. They took away, they canceled all the, my password and, login name, things like that. So when I tried to log in, stuff the next day just to see if it was still working, obviously it didn't. I said, wow, cleanup crew came in. And it's like, I'm just sitting here, shaved my head actually, just because I was looking for something cathartic to do, just because I was in mourning and, all this anxiety about, what do I do next? I don't even know. I'm just sitting here just wondering if this is what would define my career, right? So all this uncertainty, all this anxiety, you go through like the 5 stages of grief, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, all that stuff. But yeah, the first 24 hours, even 48 were terrible. And that first Monday after that Friday, God, I didn't have to go to work or I couldn't go to work. And I'm just sitting there thinking, how am I gonna pay my bills? Like, how am I gonna keep money coming in so I can keep things up? So yeah, all of that was running through my head for sure.
What saved your career?
Yeah, great question. It was a combination of things, kind of what I hinted at or referenced briefly in the first career path. So the first is the network. Well, both parts involve the network. The first part of the network was to kind of hand me a fish, right? To say, hey Jerry, we got a job, you know, we can line something up for you, right? And so that was the first thing. And for me to really take that with both hands and never let go and make sure I was faithful to honor my friends for giving me another chance to, find work. And then the second stage really was, yeah, when I was helping teach leadership, right? That kind of helped unlock some, mental possibilities about my effectiveness as a leader. Like and now I believe that if I put enough hard work into it and that I was willing to take constructive feedback and really no longer avoid the things that I've been avoiding, maybe I would be good at this. But also to see it modeled for me, right? There's the phrase that leadership is more caught than taught. And I will give a shout out to a pharmacist named Michael McGrady, who's in my fraternity. And I tell people, Michael, saved my career. Like, where would I be without him? Right. And I say this because, I paired up with him to help teach these workshops. They paired me up with him. And, I was just so excited because I knew, I liked the guy so much. I admired him for the work that he was doing. And so I got a firsthand look, of how he motivated me, brought me along, helped equip me to really do my part well. And I thought to myself, why am I so willing to run through walls for this guy? Why do I want to do everything I can to come through for him? And I said, okay, let me list things out. I had time to reflect, which is another thing. Number one, he's fun to be around. He's just fun. He's not abrasive. He gets along well with people. He's likable. Number two, he's fun to learn from. Like he's always reading another interesting book or, he's reading about some clinical study and other things like that. He's a learner and it's fun to learn from. So he doesn't lose his temper, right? He keeps an even keel, like no failure is too fatal where we can't find another solution. He's always tinkering, like, right. In the same way he's always learning, he's always tinkering, always experimenting. And then bringing me alongside him, hey, Jerry, I did all this. What do you think of this? Like, what am I missing? And so he was continually inviting me to collaborate. So now it's like, I feel like I want to contribute something, right? And then number four, work ethic. There's no question how hard he works, right? Like he should be the hardest worker on the floor and not in a way where people start to use that to justify their own laziness, but in a way that inspires me to work harder as well. It's like, oh, Mike's working that hard, then I'm going to work hard too. So yeah, that's what saved my career.
So, what advice would you give to somebody who just lost their job?
Yeah. The first thing is give yourself time to mourn, 24, 48, even 72 hours just to, allow yourself to be sad about the fact that, yeah, there's something in your life that you were counting on, right? That you found some satisfaction in, that you found some identity in, right? Because, what is the purpose of a job, right? You are exchanging time and effort to get compensation, right? So you take care of the company and the company ways taking care of you, right? And so when that goes away, right? And you say, wow, like I think the fact that I don't have this anymore, it's okay. Like it's okay to feel sad. Don't let it devolve into self pity, but just take time to say, hey, what I have to grasp with the fact that this is no longer a part of my life, right? Um, and then the second thing I would have people do is to ask themselves, well, you know, what opportunities does this open up for me, and to ask them, well, now that I have this free time, maybe I experiment with the career that I've always wanted to have, but never, had the chance to because I was under other social obligations or other things that kept me from really pursuing this. Right. Another book to kind of throw on there is Designing Your Life or Designing Your Work Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, because they talk about this, that you realize that your work life is an iterative process. What satisfied you 5 years ago may not satisfy you now. And what satisfies you now may not satisfy you 5 years from now. Right. For me, pharmacy provided a lot of interesting moments and a decent quality of life despite my ups and downs. And at the same time, I know now, like in 5 years, 10 years from now, like I don't want a day-to-day pharmacy job, and it's okay for my bosses to hear this. They know that the best ones usually move on to something bigger. But yeah, I'd say that would be my advice is just to say, hey, okay, yeah, grieve, reflect, and then, take action steps to really, learn and interview and meet people in spaces that you want to learn from. And just say, hey, can I grab a cup of coffee and just kind of, hear your take on things from where you are? And you're not looking for a job. You can if you want to, but don't have these interviews for the specific uh, purpose of trying to get a job. Just learn and get a better idea of what's out there. And then from there, then you can flip to the key question, which is how would someone like me, get involved in this space, right? Because now you're still exploring instead of saying, hey, can I just send you my resume? Right. That will shut people down pretty quick. You have to make that transition in a way that's gentle and inviting instead of pushy, right? Because if I go out and have these interviews and people know I'm just looking for a job, it's like, bad salesmanship, right? If people are like, oh, I'm going to sign up for a free call with Jerry and I'm just pushing at them to like buy upselling my coaching packages the whole time, I'm not going to have any kind of good reputation or any kind of real business, right? Because they're just like, oh, Jerry's just baiting me to come in and then slamming me with stuff instead of really being the guy that I need to, find my way in life.
Right. Thank you so much for breaking that down, Jerry. Now, and you mentioned that you had some bounce paychecks from an employer before, and and on your website, I was reading through your blog, and you give a story about an owner of a boot store there in
Mhm.
Houston, Texas, who had to close his business down because of the corona. And
Yeah.
he was very sad for his employees and everything who were relying on him. And so, what advice do you have for business owners who have had to cease operations for whatever the reason may be?
Yeah. I mean, in seeing that example up close, I think, part of it is just admitting your limits, right? On one hand, I love the fact that business owners are going to, stay persistent and finding ways to say, hey, you know what, like as soon as we believe this doesn't work, then that's on us, right? But I think if you realize, hey, like this is not going to be a sustainable trajectory and long, yeah, when the time is right, if you set some kind of mental tripwires to say, hey, okay, if revenue dips below like 50% of receivables or something like that, then okay, no, we need to hit it checked and I need to, because people can frame it two ways. On one hand, it's like, sorry, I can't come through for you anymore. I know you didn't do anything to lose your job, but I still have to let you go. But, you know, don't just like settle for that. Like help them get on the feet, right? Make referrals, help them, help light a path for them so that, they can kind of go through this process and start you know, pursuing another job that, that would help pay the bills and things like that. Cause that's one thing that people I think overlook is to say, oh, these businesses closing is so sad. And it's like, yeah, on one hand, that's true. Like I've lost a lot of great restaurants because, Corona took them down. Like the Luby's chain is gone, Snap Kitchen is gone, and both had their share of fans, right? But as last I checked, right, there are plenty of people who are burnt out, like who are still employed, right? So it sounds like there's still no shortage of work that needs to be done. It's just a matter of these people who lost their jobs to, take another snapshot of the work that's still out there and say, okay, which work do I want to do? maybe that is the opportunity to free yourself up to, start in business or do other things in the space. And now that you have the blessing of starting after the market's been disrupted. So you don't have to start on a plan and then, oops, Corona hit. Now crap, I lost my company or I lost my job. Now it's like, no, like the wave already came and now you can build a new sandcastle, right? So
Right.
see what happens.
I love that analogy. The wave already came, and you can build a new sandcastle. Mine will be three fucking stories.
There you go.
So, Jerry, I want you to give me an example of some coaching that you did on any client of your choosing. I want to
Mhm.
know what the problem was, what you did to help them, and then what the result was.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's give them an example with real need to sink their teeth into. So I think one of the best examples that I heard from a client was, the client was working for a very temperamental boss. She was managing a studio, and the boss was always very vague in his expectations. And she would try to ask him, "How am I doing?" And he's like, "Oh, it's." But there was one day where it was after hours, and the boss called, and she was off the clock, so she didn't pick up, and he just blew up that next day. It's like, "How dare you? Da da da! I don't think you're committed to this. Da da da." It's like, well, why? Like, where's this coming from, right? Last I checked, you told me I was doing a good job, so where's this coming from? And so she calls me on a Thursday night. She's like, "Jerry, how do I navigate this?" Right? Really, really upset for me to say something that's going to either cause me to lose my job or things like that, because now I feel like I'm not saying nice. And so I said, okay, there's two kinds of coaching approaches, right? Like the one that I'm certified in is, ask a lot of questions, let the client design their own solution. And, that's ideally, the default. But in this case, like if she has no frame of reference to work from now, she needs more of like an athletic coach to say, okay, when you get on the field, right, I need you to look out for this and that and be ready to do this. And so, yeah, we just said, okay. And this is in the framework that I mentioned on my website with the PDF that I have available. Basically, you have to imagine what would success look like. Like, what's a successful conversation for you, right? And so she thinks, okay, well, we want to get back to the point where we can reconcile, that we can have a better understanding of what the job requires and things like that. So, okay, what are some key things you want to be sure to address? What are some key things you want to be able to say to her, to your boss? And so, she told me, I said, okay, don't just write those down, rehearse them in a mirror, right? Like study your tone, study your posture, study how you're coming across when you say these things, right? And then, practice with a friend if you need to. But yeah, point being, right, like get strong in the dojo before you get back out on the street. Engage in anything, right? And then, yeah, find 10 seconds of courage to initiate the conversation. Hey, you don't have to be like, oh, okay, I'm strong enough. It's like, no, you just need to get the ball rolling so that you can't, back out if you're scared. But, if you've rehearsed enough the way you need to, then, yeah. And then believe that you have that possibility that you can get back to a strong working relationship. It might not be perfect. It might not be, like the best where you're happy to see each other, but as long as you get to a point where you can trust it, respect each other in the professional sense that the email I got from her afterward when, she managed to navigate that conversation and kind of, find that closure, right? Instead of letting all that frustration stay pent up in her. And, for her to tell me, I don't know how I would have gotten through this without you. Like I read that on a Saturday morning and I was just so, I mean, I'm getting tingles now just thinking about it, telling you this.
I love the fact that of all your experience and all the work that you've done, you chose an example that was you working like one on one with a person, and so that again reinforces how personally invested you are in what you're doing because you deal with large groups of people in the workplace and everything as well as individual people, and so I'm very impressed and very happy and refreshed, that's the right word, refreshed that your go-to is is just getting back to why you're doing what you're doing is to help ultimately individual people at the end of the day. And and so thank you for that, Jerry. And now you, of course, you bill yourself as a coach for Asian American leaders, because you're coming from that background. I want to know to what extent, and if any, both before COVID and now, that you've seen any sort of xenophobia, any sort of hatred against your people and how that if that's played a part in the workplace and in your coaching or not?
Yeah, great question. Thankfully for me, I have not had any hate directed my way. But that being said, I mean, Houston has its own share of xenophobia that, is still evident today. The example that I can share is that a couple years ago, I learned that Chinatown in Houston was actually built on discrimination. And what I mean by that is they said, hey, we don't like all the Asians. We're going to make them live in the southwest part of the city. And here's the insult to injury to Bannon is that I found out that they divided up the voting district in such a way where they couldn't concentrate all the people into one district where they could actually have a political voice, right? And so just because discrimination is not causing direct like physical violence doesn't mean it's okay. They're like, oh well, this is just silent oppression where no one's really getting hurt. It's like, okay, no. Um, let's unpack this a little and not be afraid of it anymore. Because yeah, OCA, the local organization of Chinese Americans, they have all sorts of political advocacy workshops because they know that Asians are more likely to be screened at voting districts to be sure if they're actually legitimately citizens. They know that, numbers are stacked against us, right? To think that, oh, like we can't accept too many Asians because they're like, wrecking our grade curve or things like that. It's like, no, that's not cool. But yeah, I'll admit it was reading about some of the hate crimes in like Atlanta and then New York, where it's just so prevalent. And, when you hear about a lady who had acids like poured on her and things, and you just sit
Right.
there thinking, and to talk to people about the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? Like they called it the Chinese Exclusion Act. They had the audacity to say this. This is specifically to exclude Chinese people. And then for them to say, "Oh yeah, we're past that." It's like I don't know, guys. I feel like the more things change, the more things stay the same.
Well, those sneaky bastards over there in Houston, how dare they? 'Cause I'm pretty sure I've been through that Chinatown since when I lived there. And now I'll never look at it the same. And I'm hearing that there's so much more that you know and can say about the xenophobia targeted there in Houston. And so when I have you back on, besides spilling the tea on the churches, we're gonna spill some of that good old Southern Houston tea as well, darling.
Oh, I
Yes.
got stories for you for sure.
Ooh, y'all is gonna get good. And, reading is fundamental, as Mama RuPaul would say. And I think our next interview, we're gonna read some bitches, some church
Mhm.
bitches, and some Houston. Sounds like that's some Republican nonsense going on over there. So, so let's talk about your salsa dancing.
Sure.
I was so thrilled to see that you are confident enough in your manhood and in all of your shit to also be a salsa dancer, to put it out there on all of your platforms and everything like that. None of the words that I've said today have phased you, and I'm very, 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 very impressed with you as a human soul. And I used to take hip hop dance and like funk at Planet Funk in Houston, Texas, under Sean Welling, and then I also taught hip hop when I was in the Air Force for
Nice.
a group of little 8-year-old girls for like a season and stuff
Awesome.
like that. Because the instructor, she didn't have no soul. She had no flavor. She was a white girl. I love my white people, but not all of y'all are hip hop inclined. And
Mhm.
so, and kudos to her because she understood her strengths and what she could and couldn't do. She
Yeah.
was like, I can't do hip hop, but I believe you can. And I was like, oh, I got you for that. So,
In a way that's complimentary and not stereotypical. Oh, you're black, you like hip hop and fried chicken, right? I mean, come on. And you're just like, I resent that. You're right, but I still resent that, right?
right.
Yeah.
so, and so no truer words, as my dead aunt would say, no truer words have ever been spoken. And God, I've taken salsa classes there in Houston as well. It's like big deal. The Hispanic, influence is a big deal. Lots of fucking drunken nights with salsa, like chips and salsa and margaritas.
Nice.
Margaritas. And so I want you to tell us what your initial salsa inspiration was. My favorite blog on your website is the one about salsa. And so
Nice.
what Jerry has done is he's taken and he's pulled the lessons from salsa out and converted them over, transferred them, highlighted the transferable skills, which transfer from the salsa dance floor into the business world, much like you would say, like from sports. But dancing is as good of a sport to me as anything else. And then you broke them down, and we're going to go through each of them: command, confidence, creativity, communication, and commitment, one by one. But tell me, when did you first think I want to do salsa?
Yeah, it was kind of just an unexpected thing, really. My freshman year at Rice, they had a spring formal with the salsa theme, and the lesson was terrible to band. And like they just taught us like a couple basic steps, nothing really to shout about. And so, me and my date later trying it out, we're just like, this is boring and difficult, and we're not now they're supposed to have fun. So I'm just gonna leave it alone for a while, right? That failure aversion that kept me from so many things. I just said I'm just gonna shelve this like forever. And then it wasn't until I got to Memphis for pharmacy school when a friend of a friend was actually trying to start up the scene in Memphis. And by my third year in school, I was tired of studying, and my GPA had kind of gelled to a point where I could like nothing too high or too low could really like change it. So I just said, I'm just going to spend more time like dancing and investing in lessons because I'm just tired of studying. So I actually got somewhat decent at it and started to get to a point where I enjoyed it. I even bought my own DVDs, to study it on my own. And then right as I got to a point where I was comfortable social dancing, I graduated and moved to Knoxville, where there is no salsa. There's swing dancing, which, at one point I loved and learned, but I was like, at this point, I was like, that salsa. And so I went through this really unproductive cycle of like lack of confidence, but I miss it. And then, so I want to go and try dancing it, but I'm rusty. And then, I'd get just a glimpse of what things could be. And then it would just shut down again. And then even after I moved back to Houston 11 years ago, most of the friends I initially made the second time around in Houston were into two-stepping. And so I was like, well, peer pressure, here we go. Let me just learn how to two-step, which is still dancing in a way that still helped me with my confidence as a dancer. And then so finally, and salsa was dormant. I was still going to occasional socials, but again, still in the same cycle. But it wasn't until 2014 when a Venezuelan friend invited me to a free salsa dancing event at the downtown aquarium on Bagby. And there was this one hot blonde there that was a really good dancer. And I said, I have to dance with her. And, I get a chance. I'm like locked in, like I'm not freezing up. I'm not forgetting moves. I'm just like throwing everything I can on the table. And, she gives me a hug at the end. Did I stay away from this for so? And then I'm like, okay, I'm back. And so, yeah, once I got burnt out on church volunteerism and replaced it with salsa dancing, I was a whole lot happier. So, yeah, it's just been a regular thing ever since. And then the funny thing is just to see it come full circle where Rice started an actual salsa club about 5 years ago. And when I jumped in, it clearly got to a point where I was like better off helping as instructor than just trying to take, cheap lessons from here. And yeah, it's just been great. And also, me and a couple other dancer friends occasionally will also even, host dance lessons as fundraisers to raise money and awareness for causes we care about. And so it's just been this generosity model where it's just fun, where, we get to teach and elevate the quality of dancers and people get a quality lesson and then, good causes get support. So yeah, dancing has just been such a big part of my transformation because now, right, in the same way, leadership, salsa dancing, I couldn't be good at this. Well, what if I could? I put enough work and wow, this is amazing. I have to keep doing it. And I want others to enjoy it as much as I do. So yeah, that's kind of the journey.
Come on, Dancing with the Stars. I look forward to your debut one day. Okay, so the first thing, command, you say this step means, or this aspect of salsa means you have to take care of the people you are leading and know where you are taking them. Give me more.
Yeah. Basically, right. You have to know what in dancing, right? It's like you have to know a couple moves ahead of and it kind of queued up so that you're not just like forgetting what it is. It's like you have to have a target in mind. It's like, well, and actually it's not even about the moves. It is, I want this girl to enjoy dancing with me. Right. And so same thing with your team. It's like, I want my team to have a good day. And by having a good day, we hit a financial target and, we're communicating well. And so when you are confident in what success is for them, not just because you want it, but because it's in their best interest, things tend to go a lot better for you. So yeah, command is just being, yeah, having that. I'm going to set a good tone when it comes to a good work environment or being a good dance partner.
Hey, nothing like a boss in true control, be it I was gonna say a man in control, but you know what? It could be a woman too. "Tie me up, baby, tie me up."
Yeah.
And then confidence, it says, "In dancing, confidence comes from having a solid grasp of fundamentals, which includes learning moves and how to recover when you mess up."
Yeah. You can't afford to be knocked off your perch, right? And if someone kind of throws a curveball your way, throws a hook you're not ready for, boom, right? And you're like, okay, how do I recover? Right. They don't talk to you about that because a lot of leaders, and I mean that was true for me too, right? You think you go in and you're like, okay, act like I know what to do again, and then someone just hits you from the side or an angle you're not ready for, and then all of a sudden you kind of cower. And it's like, you can't afford to do that. You need to be ready for anything that they throw at you. So part of it is just learning on the fly. You're just like, okay, well, all right, if all else fails, let me just reset. Let me hear things. Okay, let's get back to what we know is good for us. So yeah.
All right. Creativity says the best dancers are not predictable. Rather, they use variety to keep things interesting for their partners.
Yeah. The gauge I use at work, because yeah, I have at least one or two technicians that like to be on this. We'll have a morning huddle, right, daily. And my gauge as to whether or not the meeting is interesting enough is whether or not they actually put down their phone to actually listen to me without me telling them to, right? So if I'm telling a compelling story, right, and all of a sudden, oh, that got my attention. Okay, now I know that I'm getting them, right? Now I know they're listening really well. And so, yeah. So on one hand, the routine is good. And you want that regular daily meeting because that helps, assess things, plan things and such. But to add some degree of variety, just to kind of, throw in a new spice in the recipe, right? So you're not just eating this jambalaya is boring now. It's like, okay, well, let's just maybe just add more cayenne or, whatever else like that, right? So yeah, just you mix it up on them. It's just more fun that way when they're just like, I wonder what you will have for me today. And it's usually a good mentality because now they're open to what I have to share with them.
Preach. And okay, then communication. The epicenter here was that finesse is better than force.
Yeah. On one hand, we joke about this in dancing where you can't just spoon feed your moves. You're like, I'm going to turn you to the right now. Like, you're not going to be able to say those things over the music, let alone everybody else, right? Um, you got to be able to, we say in dancing, be firm but gentle, right? It's like there should be no question as to where you want them to go and to do it in a way that doesn't like shove them, right? Or like jerky movements, but you want a very smooth, fluid ride, right? Like I think the best analogy I heard from one other dancer friend was like, she's like, from a follower standpoint, it's like the best dancers, or the best leaders are like roller coasters, right? They just kind of lead you on this journey and there's ups and downs and there's variety. And it's like, oh, wow, like this is not predictable and boring. He's not just doing the basic for like 6 counts in a row. So this is fun. So yeah. And to make clear those moves, it's like, okay, step here, da, 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 but to do it without having to use your words, right? But, obviously in work settings, yeah, be clear and useful with your conversations. But in a dance sense, yeah, it goes beyond, right? There's tone, there's body language, and delivery and things like that. So nuance everything, not just the words you use.
So what Jerry's saying, y'all, is you've got to be a smooth operator.
There you go.
I'm sorry. And so then the last one is commitment. And it says messing up does not mean you give up. Quitting in the middle of a dance out of frustration is rude. Quitting on your team because you are exhausted is selfish.
Yeah, I'll give you here's the specific example that comes to mind. Right, this is as real as it gets. I was at Wild West many years ago. It actually closed during the pandemic. I told people it'll be here till the rapture. It turns out no, pandemic was all it took to take it down. Sad day. Rest in peace, Wild West. Let's hopefully a Kickstarter or GoFundMe will get it resurrected. But there was one time I tried to ask a woman to dance, and she goes, "Actually, could you dance with my friend? Because the guy dancing with her, she's a beginner, and the guy dancing with her like got frustrated, just like walked off the floor in the middle of the dance." And I look over and she's just like, "I am such a bad dancer." And I just thought to myself, "Oh, this breaks my heart." Like to let this one experience just, again, it does define her, but if that's the story she's telling herself, right? Like, I can't believe some guy would allow that to happen. So yeah, and there's times on the other side too, right? Some people, like when I was still learning and, I'm stumbling over my feet and, thankfully the girls didn't walk off. They're just like, no, I committed to dancing and we're finished the dance. I might have danced with them again, but, they said, hey, I honor this commitment to when we say we will dance, we finish the whole song. And it's been for me too, where it's like, oh, wow, wasn't expecting, this level of dancer from, I thought, there's more than that, but you know what? No, I'm going to be a good dancer and a responsible dancer and finish the song and say thank you. Absolutely.
Follow through till the end. I love it. So this just about wraps us, but I feel like we've talked about 3 hours worth of it, 3 or 5 hours worth of information in this hour.
Yeah.
Now, I always let my guests have the last word. Now, this show here will air. It'll be on the 6th of January. So it'll be the first release for the new year.
Nice.
So for your last word, for your advice to the globe,
Mhm.
I want you to speak in terms of the new year.
Okay.
So go.
Game on. All right. Let me take a second just because I don't want to give something cheesy or contrived.
Yeah, take a moment, meditate, woosah, do what you need to do. Namio holding,
If you're hearing this and it's the start of the year, let's take a fun angle. If you join a gym, what will make sure that you don't quit in February? Yeah, well, no, that's a starter. Let me do something a little more profound. What would help you live this year without regret? Let's do that because yeah, like what have you been holding on to for so long that you're afraid to share with people that you say, you know what, this is the year I want to go after it because I understand that I only have so much time, I only have so much money. I'm tired of, giving it to things or people that aren't worth it longer. So yeah, what would be that?
You know what? I like that because that's the type of shit that is so, if I say like this type of shit, this type of valuable
Mhm.
insight,
Yeah.
that it's like you're working us in reverse. Instead of going, I want to lose weight or whatever, I want a new job, but why do I want it? Like you're going motivation first, then the action will follow. And and therefore you're more likely to stick with it. Look at you, you're all clever and things.
Happy to help. Yeah.
I'd hire you as a coach.
Thanks.
So where can people find you?
Yeah. Go to www.adaptingleaders.com. There's that free PDF download on how to handle hard conversations. You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute call, and the free book blog is all there. So whether you are on a tight budget or a medium budget, or if you're ready for, the Cadillac of coaching packages, hit me up and see what I can do to help you and to honor your budget preferences as well.
Yeah, he has some really fun names for his packages and on there, and I'm gonna look through there and see which one I can get. Who knows? Who knows? I've never actually met a coach before that I actually gave a damn enough about
Mm,
anything until I met you, and I'm not just saying that because you're on my show. I would hope by now that motherfuckers in this world understand that that I'm not fake. I say what the fuck I mean, and I say the truth. And so no, I'm actually going to hire and work with because you're so much fun. Like your personality is just it's just very, very it's quite bubbly for like a man who seems to identify as straight. Like you don't have toxic masculinity. You don't have like a lot of the things that would put me off of
mhm,
people. You're very approachable. And they used to tell me in the military when I was a recruiter, you know, one of the supervisors would say if they like you, they buy.
mhm.
And so like you're very, very likable and you sold me, baby. You have sold me this day. And so adaptingleaders.com, everything will go in the show notes. And then we will drop this bad boy here at the start of the year. And then everybody will be better for it. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jerry.
Thanks, Savannah. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devanin at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devanin, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.